Okay, thanks everyone for coming here. I guess we're going to start with short introductions in speakers and the protocols. The topic today is user acquisition with bridges or bridge wars for user acquisition. So I hope to touch on how they do it, anything others can replicate. Feel free to be spicy, interrupt each other, fight, whatever. Like if we turn this into a fight afternoon, probably going to be the best panel. So I guess a sentence each, and we can start. I'm Marko. I run Jumper Exchange. We aggregate different bridges and indexes, and we try to acquire users outside of the industry, which is really difficult.
Hi everyone, my name is Shawn. I'm from Axelar. So essentially Axelar is one of the interoperability protocols, support close to 70 chains right now, both Cosmos and EVM ecosystem. We're going to expand into the Move ecosystem with Suri, also Solana, Stellar, Ripple, and Cardano and Ton. So kind of bridging really multiple VMs out there.
Awesome. Hey everyone, my name is Max. I am the ecosystem lead at Everclear. And Everclear is not a bridge. We define it as the first clearing layer. What we do, we coordinate the liquidity settlement across multiple chains. And what it means in practice is that we help other bridges, in particular the intent-based bridges and solvers, to rebalance the liquidity in the most capital-efficient way, in the cheapest way possible.
Hey everyone. I'm Nikhil. I lead product at the Wormhole Foundation. So Wormhole is also an interoperability protocol. Connects over six different VMs, over 40 chains. It's transferred, I think, over 50 billion in volume, which we recently crossed, which we're really excited about. And yeah, we're a platform for protocols and developers to build multi-chain really easily.
Thank you. So first off, every question should kind of revolve around B2B and B2C. Like, it doesn't have to be specific, whatever you have thoughts. I mean, we can touch on both. Everclear is the only project that's not attacking the B2C side, but you have a lot of experience connects before you did have a user-centric interface. So the question is, what do you consider to be the biggest hurdle in user acquisition for interoperability protocols? And like how do the hurdles differ and how do you approach them for B2B and B2C side? Anyone can take. Max, you started. There you go. Sorry.
Yeah, no, it's. I think there are very different set of challenges whether you're targeting retail users or B2B users. Our thesis is that the bridge UIs as we know them today, so the ones that normal users use today to go from one chain to another one, will gradually fade away. There will be no need for a user to actually go to a specific bridge page, bridge portal, and then bridge any token, because all these interactions will be embedded within apps. So we're going to see apps where you can interact with it independently from where the app is deployed and when you hold token, and underneath this bridge communication, this bridging of tokens is going to happen in an invisible way for users. So I think the conversation will start really shifting from how do we attract users to our UI to use a bridge to how do we attract developers that build applications that are using the bridge underneath? And this is what Everclear has been doing in the last year and a half. Connect was the previous version of Everclear. We've been around for, since 2018-19, so it's been a long time. And we used to have a bridge UI, and then gradually shifted into having this adoption from applications. So in February of this year, we made $500 million in volume, and the vast majority of it was just driven by application bridging underneath without the user even noticing. So I think that then the conversation, I think that the mindset changes, okay, how do we, as business development, marketers, general projects, attract this type of people to really start using those bridges and integrate them into their workflow?
Yeah, I just want to add, like, contrary to what Mark said just now, Axelar is actually not a bridge, very similar to Wormhole here, is that we actually have bridges built on top of us. So Squid Router is one of the ecosystem apps built by an external team. There's also another team called InterSwap. The liquidity model is very different. So for Squid Router, essentially it uses existing liquidity across the different DEXs on different chains. So essentially it doesn't take liquidity off the chain itself and deploy into a central pool itself. So essentially you can route any asset to any asset, right? So, but the thing is that if you look at the user psyche, we come back to the question about user acquisition. The current user psyche for bridging is usually token bridging, meaning you do like for like, meaning ABC to ABC, right? It will not be ABC to DEF, right? So the psyche needs to change a bit with regards to that. Right now, we are seeing a lot of like just USDC to USDC, ETH to ETH across different ecosystems. But how can we make it a lot more seamless that we can straight away go into the end token without users kind of realizing that? I think that's one of the goals for Squid Router. Then the other thing to think about it is, so one of the products that Axelar kind of built on top of the messaging protocol itself, what we call interchain token service, right? Wormhole have something similar, Layer0 have something similar. What interchain token service is that there is two modes of interacting with it. One is for developers to deploy any custom tokens, any ERC tokens, and they have managers that you can do sending of burn min, lock min type of situation to actually bridge between the ecosystems that we support. On top of that, we see a lot of meme coins actually using. So right now, I think in this cycle, we've seen a huge product market fit with the meme cycle. And we also have a front end with Axelar's interchain token service, which is the one-click deploy. So any token, any real-world asset, any meme token have actually used that multiple times where they've copied their existing ERC20 token, put that into the front end. You're able to spin out, so-called interoperable tokens on 17 other EVMs. And we want to extend that very seamlessly to all the non-EVMs that we're expanding in the next few months.
Yeah, I think I agree with some of the points that have been said. From Wormhole's perspective, our primary user that we focus on protocols. And so Wormhole, the core interoperability protocol, is kind of B2B. We focus on protocols. We focus on making the developer experience to build multi-chain really, really easy. And that's why we've built products that you can just developers can pick and use out of the box and really easily deploy to start going cross-chain and going multi-chain. But then on top of that, those protocols that build on top of Wormhole are focused on end users. So whether they're meme coins or whether they are asset issuers, they all have their own kind of user bases, and it's up to them to kind of figure out how to grow those user bases. But Wormhole fundamentally is I see it as focused on developers, focused on protocols, and more of a B2B product.
Yeah, I mean, most of the infra is basically like allowing from primitives, and then primitives built on top are the ones that are building funnels to kind of acquire the users. One thing that was interesting, like for the token standard, for example, this I think is going to be a major hurdle because each token standard creates a lot more fragmentation in the industry, and it just becomes more complicated for users to basically interact with them, right? You need kind of an aggregator of token standards in a way to like unify it, and users can just have one UI to access like IXT, NTT, L0, or OFT, or whatever it is. But so you're not like actively thinking about B2C side of user acquisition. It's mostly like solving the hurdles for like other dApps pretty much do it pretty much. Nice. What was it?
Yeah, but I think just to add on the point with regards to token standard, for ITS, the way that we have thought about ITS is that for the projects that we've spoken to, that there's no such thing as lock-in for using ITS, right? Definitely when you look at the token manager itself, you utilize that contract that's sitting on the two different EVM chains, but subsequently you can always replace that, right? So you essentially deploy your own ERC20 token on the two different chains, then you can actually connect to the ITS kind of what we call like token manager contract. You can also deploy your own token manager, then connect to our ITS service contract to actually send a message.
But you're always using your general message passing bridge as another link, so you are locked into that bridge.
You can swap that. Yeah.
So you can change it.
I think generally in token standards, the direction we're seeing the industry go in, especially as we see like more and more protocols don't want lock-in, and protocols want to future-proof their systems. So they want to be able to have flexibility, the ability to upgrade, and that's where I think we've seen a lot of interop products and solutions move in the direction of. And so, for like Wormhole NTT, another token transfer framework, right? You can have flexible verification. So like Lido DAO uses NTT, and they use Wormhole as a verifier and Axelar as a verifier to take wrapped staked ETH to BNB. And the DAO has full like control over evolving that configuration or changing that configuration in the future. And so I think like, yes, different asset issuers will still use, like some might use OFT, some might use NTT, some might use ITS, and there probably will be some kind of aggregate. There already is work in aggregating those. I know LiveBuy, like Socket, like you guys are all kind of doing work in aggregating those, and I think that's great. But I do think that there has been some kind of consolidation in the industry as well. Like these are kind of the 3 token standards that asset issuers and protocols use. And once we have that aggregation, should be really easy for any user to transfer tokens regardless of what underlying framework to actually take the tokens cross-chain is.
And yeah, I just want to add on a point is that from a developer experience standpoint, I think ERC20 tokens are easy to deploy, right? So essentially, ERC20 EVM to EVM, it's really easy. But I think what Wormhole have did really well is like, with the Solana SPL side, it's very easy to connect to the SPL. What we want to do is really help a lot of the EVM ecosystem or even non-EVM ecosystem to kind of move seamlessly across all of these differences in terms of the code base, right? So for anyone that is coding and build an SPL token can deploy SPL token using ITS, then redeploy that on EVM through Axelar itself, right? So you think of it like where we build once, deploy multiple chains type of concept.
Gotcha. So it's native token on every chain, but just the rails between those are connected with the GMP, right? Nice.
Yeah, so Shawn, let me ask you a question. You said that this standard in theory is bridge agnostic, right? Protocol agnostic. Is there any case where somebody has deployed an ITS and is not using Axelar?
Right now, no.
Yeah. No. Is there any case from Wormhole right now?
Yeah, there is.
There is not using Wormhole?
Yeah. Okay. People have deployed NTT and they use their own custom verifier.
So not another bridge, but their own custom thing.
Yeah, their own custom verifier, exactly.
Okay, yeah, because this is a push that we've been trying to do at Everclear for years already. After the multi-chain incident last year, that happened, is it 2 years ago already? Where this, every token was wrapped with their protocol, with their bridge basically, and there was this token issuer basically wrapped their token by the multi-chain bridge, and it was talking about billion of values, and they brought into different chains, and then the bridge was not even hacked; it was forced to go offline by the Chinese government. Like they just decided to turn off the server, and then it was the end of this decentralized bridge. And all of a sudden, you have million and billions of tokens stuck on those destination chain with no way to go back to the origin chain. And so you have values that is lost there forever because the bridge has been forced to turn off, and there is a system of lock-in with these standards. And so with Everclear, we started with an AIP called 7281. It was targeted as saying to token issuers and developers, hey, do not lock you into a specific system, right? Even, retain the ownership of your token when you deploy to different chains. So then if something goes wrong with one bridge, you can just simply swap it for another one, right? You're never locked into the same system forever. And that's the power that I think token issuers should have. And that's a way to remove that kind of locking that you were talking about.
I think that was a good design choice because you can see everybody who's developing token standards are moving away from shared to isolated security and full-on customization basically within that protocol, because that's the only way that you're actually going to get wider adoption, because no one actually wants to get locked into any one vendor, right? So to kind of continue in that, maybe there's going to be more on the B2B side. How specifically for like acquiring either clients or users, how much are you like data oriented versus like spray and pray? Let's say it's a spectrum, and can you like single out some efforts that were like data-based decisions that were successful or not successful, like more as an educational for others can kind of figure out what to do in their protocols?
Yeah, so I think on that side, it's like for some of the ITS tokens that utilize Axelar for that case, we study the pattern where the bridging activity is to a certain ecosystem. Then we also kind of help them map up what are some of the retention model, right? So that there's a complete loop of user acquisition where end-to-end where you can find utility, like pairing it with a DEX, then subsequently you have better liquidity pool there, you can yield farm on the liquidity pool, then subsequently you have a hedging on the pub DEX side, right? So having all that rails ready for any user to think of when you bridge that token over, there are all the different rails that are ready. So this one whole loop of DeFi acquisition is there. The other one is to think about what's the expansion with regards to extending other kind of how I put it, strategies that they can run. Right now, a lot of the bridging activity is running for incentives, right? So how can you arbitrage certain chains for certain rewards? I think those are the things that we're thinking around on data side.
Yeah, I think Wormhole, one thing that we are really excited about is bringing more asset issuers on chain. We think that that's going to bring a lot of new liquidity into crypto, which I think is very exciting. And so like we're working with Securitize, we're working with BlackRock, we're working with new stablecoin projects to like bring assets on chain. And so I think that's one area that we're really excited about, that we're heavily focused on. And obviously also working with kind of the top protocols like Lido DAO we worked with, as I mentioned before, and other sort of major protocols that are in the ecosystem. I think beyond that, like there's tons of protocols and tokens to service. There are even tons of chains to service. And then the question becomes, how do you like best service all of those? And again, it goes back to like when I look at interop protocols, they're fundamentally B2B, and we need to make the developer experience really, really good so that it's as self-serve as possible, and we can try and prioritize on like the ones that are going to move the most needle for us. But then, if you're a smaller project and you're getting started, or if you're a meme coin project, low market cap, and you're trying to like distribute your token cross chain, then it's as easy as possible for you to do that. So I think like improving the developer experience, having SDKs, having UIs for deployments, having easy configuration of all these things, developer tooling is really important. And then obviously, in addition to that, there's like protocols that you support, but then there's also new chains that you go to. And I think that's another thing we think about is how we can evolve Wormhole messaging to make it so that it's like more permissionless to like connect to new chains, and chains that the Wormhole guardians don't necessarily support verifying can still use Wormhole messaging with their own verifier, plug into the guardian network in some way.
And I think with that, I think it's important. Now there are a lot of no-code tools that allow you to deploy tokens. I've seen the one from Axelar is very nice. A project working with us recently launched their own launchpad for cross-chain tokens. It's called Bootnode. It's very nice. In our case, it's just to clarify what we do. We work with solvers, as we said. Basically, we work within the intent-based architectures where a user express what they want to do on the destination chain, and there is a solver on the destination chain which owns their own liquidity, and they will execute the transaction on behalf of the user on the destination chain. And then the solver basically receives their token from the user on the origin chain. So this is what all the intent-based bridges do, like router protocol, signups, across, they have this mechanism. The problem at that point is that the solver needs to somehow bring back their liquidity to the destination chain because they want to repeat the cycle. And so how do they do it right now? They use centralized exchanges, they use OTC deals. Instead, what we help them is to operationalize the service to rebalance their liquidity by basically finding a coincidence of wants with other solvers that have a need to go in the different directions. And so that's how we cut dramatically the cost to rebalance the liquidity. Long story short, our customers, our users are solvers. So these are institutional players that have very specific needs. They're still very limited in the space. I think we're talking about maybe 50 players that manage the whole liquidity across all chains. But it's a network that's expanding fast. The barrier to become a solver has become extremely low. And so we're going to see thousands of these entities that do operations across the different chains, that simplify the user experience for users and for builders, of course. So what we want to do as Everclear is to serve those guys, making sure that they can do their operations at the lowest cost possible, so increase their margins, increase their profit, and therefore drive more value on chain.
Yeah, I think Max brought up now on the intent side of things. I think intents is super interesting, right? And there's different models of intents, and one of the big challenges. I think there's a lot of trade-offs in different kinds of intense models. And one of the challenges that Max mentioned is rebalancing. And, for example, if you have an intense protocol where you have liquidity pools on different chains, you can execute transfers really, really fast. But your liquidity is then fragmented across those different chains, and as Max mentioned, you need to use centralized exchanges, or if the tokens that you're transferring are like USDC, you can use CCTP to rebalance, or like if the token is integrated with ITS or NTT or XERC20, you can kind of do on-chain rebalancing, but you still have to wait for finality. You have to like do all this operational stuff in order to rebalance and continue to execute these intents at a good price. And have it be profitable for you as a solver. And so that's one model of intents that I think is cool, and the trade-off there is like, maybe I would say very fast speed, but you have worse execution price and worse size, right? And one thing that we're working on that we're really excited about is there's intents per product similar to that that are built on top of Wormhole, like Mai and Swap. But we're working on a kind of hub and spoke intents model that we're really excited about, where all the liquidity is like pooled on one hub chain. And the trade-off there is kind of like, it's a little bit slower, but better size, better execution, and better operational overhead for solvers because they don't have to rebalance. And that's something that we're working on that we're excited about, that I think solves a slightly different use case. There's going to be use cases for the former, use cases for the latter. But overall, they kind of cover the full range of what will be valuable for users and protocols.
Yeah, so this is a good topic to segue into my next question, which is basically on the product pyramid in a way. Like as you start like climbing up, we're all becoming competitors of each other in a way, fighting for the same user base, same clients. Like they're not infinite in a way. And so the question is like, how do you guys differentiate among each other when you're fighting for the same like client user base? And like what, especially in the last like year or two, when the attention to interop came, attention to security and everything, like how did you change your messaging and like in general approach the B2B side of pitching your protocol?
Yeah, maybe I can start. Definitely curious to hear what others say, but yeah, like I think the first thing I would say is that we are all building for a much larger pie in the future. Like we obviously are all here because we think crypto is going to massively continue to grow. We're seeing institutions come on chain and issue tokenized assets on chain, which we hope is going to bring a lot more liquidity into the ecosystem. Ultimately, see more projects. So ultimately, like we're building for a much larger pie. And I think we have seen some consolidation in the interop and intent space, right? Like I think that Wormhole, Axelar, and Layer 0 are pretty much the interop protocols that are considered to be used by protocols today. And I think that in terms of intents, there's like a few as well, like Everclear is one of them, right? That are kind of the major protocols doing volume. And I think intents is actually one where I think the core interop, general message passing, is kind of like quite consolidated now, and it's difficult for a new player to enter the space. I think intents is newer, and therefore there's a bit more room for like newer kinds of models and newer kinds of intent systems. But yeah, we're building for a very large pie, and I think that will continue to exist. But in terms of differentiators, I mean, I think that Wormhole obviously has a major emphasis on security. And so we have a large security program. We have in NTT, we kind of have as much flexibility for the asset issuer as possible. You can swap out verification, you have pausing.
Can you remove guardians already?
Yeah, you can remove guardians. Yeah, you're not locked into that. The asset issuer has 100% control of the deployment. There are no like admin parameters that Wormhole contributors or the guardian set can like change on your deployment, which is something that's
so
like.
If let's say if we look at all of the token issuers, what is different between the levels of customizability between them? Because the way I understand it is like each of them is like fully customizable. So like what is the differentiator then? Like why would X project go with like Axelar standard, Wormhole standard, or L0 standard? Like is it the tech, or is it BD, or is it like what part of the pitch is what gets them in a way, if there's no that big of a differentiator on the tech side?
I mean, I think it's a combination of all three, but I do think that the tech does matter, and the feature set does matter. And then in addition to the core like smart contracts, I think that that the tooling and product suite that surrounds the core like token transfer framework matters a lot. So whether you have UIs that are easy to manage, whether you have Wormhole scan, whether you have like UIs that you can SDKs, UIs you can pull in.
Basically like add-on products.
Yeah,
that
exactly.
Exactly.
And I think on the tech side that does matter. But I don't want to monopolize this. I want to hear like what other people have to say.
No, I just want to add what Nikhil said, right? So what are some of the value-added services? And, at the end of the day, I think Axelar as a platform, we're not like just a bridge, right? Bridges are built on top of Axelar. So when we think about platform, we just recently announced the upgrade to having this Mobius development stack. Just now, what Nikhil said, the ambition for Wormhole to deploy permissionlessly, we are probably close by year end where permissionless EVM connections can be done to Axelar. That also adds more utility to the Axelar token itself. You can permission a set of verifiers, and those verifiers are already kind of a pre-selected 40 top validators out there. Right now, Axelar has 75 validators on the main chain. The key technical architectural difference versus some of our different protocols out there is that Axelar is a blockchain that connects blockchain, right? What some of the differentiating factors is that you have the ability to have programmability on top of Axelar. So essentially, WASM is already enabled on top of Axelar. So there are conversations of people looking to use Axelar as like building an L2 on top of Axelar to actually have this kind of concentrated liquidity pools. That's one mental model. But the other thing is that one thing that I think there's one discussion point about institutions. I shall not jump there first. But what I wanted to come back is the point about agency over for developers, right? Or protocols to decide the security models. I think the trade-off is actually minimal in my opinion, where right now people don't really understand the real risk, and to the users it's not very well represented, right? And if you look at a lot of some of the protocols out there, the long tail assets is just signed off by one verifier, right? Because to build infrastructure is not easy, right? I think there are a lot of builders in the room, and if you look at Axelar is a full open source code. You can fork Axelar. I'll challenge you guys to fork Axelar. Then, but to maintain relayers, to maintain the validators, everyone is up, 75 of them running this open source code, ensuring the network is properly working fine. And even look at multi-chain previously, when Phantom was sending corrupt messages to other chains, it didn't interrupt Axelar's performance. But some of the other protocols needed to turn out all the lanes on that front, right? So coming back to that point is that you also need to think from a scalability standpoint. Just now Nikhil mentioned a very, very interesting concept. It's hub and spoke, right? And we think from a hub and spoke basis, especially when you talk about all the different alt VMs that we're going to connect, it actually brings a lot more scalability, connecting more users, different communities. As much as this is DEF CON where it's E-focused, but there are also other communities that continue to be using that ecosystem projects. How can we move them together and move towards a much bigger goal, which Nikhil has mentioned?
Gotcha. So before, you have a thought?
I'm going to say something. I think the token space is getting commoditized, as it probably already is, from my perspective. And I think what matters is mostly brand and incentives, like in a lot of things in the industry. There is just launched a massive campaign. I think they have a 100 million something pool for people that add an OFT, that launch an OFT. And if I was a builder, that would be enough for me as a reason to choose that. Like if I look at, I can do the same customization more or less everywhere. I would try to avoid any lock-in, which is what some of the standards do. But then, I get to get shielded by a big account. I get to get incentives from the perspective.
Yeah. There's a lot of support.
It's the unfortunate reality that tech matter until a certain point, and then there is a.
Well, the tech matters, but the differences are actually marginal, right? Because there's basically everybody's going towards the same design end goal. in a way, right? With like few caveats here and there. So it's not really that big of a differentiator. So these like things around is what will probably get more developers on that.
No, my hot take here is that the user base is still too small. That's what Nikhil said, right? The user base is too small that the merits of the technical merits doesn't outweigh the incentives that come over it, right? But if you think of a much bigger scale, there's pie for everyone in this room to actually take up, right? So right now the trade-offs, technically it's huge, but because it's very incentive-driven market, right? People take incentives over the technical differences.
Fair, fair. Any questions from the audience? No? Okay, I guess we can summarize. I would summarize we need to simplify our jargon. I don't think we're going to get the users with the words we're using ever. They don't care, they don't understand. B, I have to say that this is more like a side quest bullish post. Tokenization of assets, like every tokenized asset is going to be a collateral. So like there's what, 65 trillion of assets waiting to be tokenized that can be leveraged to buy our shitcoins. Super excited for the next 4 years, doing God's work in that manner. And another thing I'd like to say, and this is maybe more of a recommendation because I've been on both B2B and B2C sides from Lefi and Jumper. I think even though you're building in like foundation for primitives, I think each B2B or infra protocol should do very hard to get in front of the eyes of the end user, because what you're basically doing is you're bolstering the activity of the subsequent protocols that build on top of you. There's more familiarity and there's more connection to it, and immediately, like if they have a connection to you, they immediately see the protocol that's built on top of you in a much more favorable light. So even though it's B2B play, the B2C side of like marketing and acquisition should never be kind of ignored, because you're kind of doing the service for every protocol that's built on top of you in the end, right?
I think that's where tokens help as well, right? Is in the whole industry. Like if you get communities and then you have interest shared and then people become advocates and it creates a positive loop, as you were saying. Having the stamp say, hey, it's built on Axelar, it's built on Wormhole, it's built on everything, like helps a lot the project, and then this is what also projects are looking for.
Correct. Awesome. Thank you for listening to us. I hope we weren't too boring.
Thank you.
Thank you.